I'm pleased to now ask our incoming chair of the board, Chris Brown. You know Chris well. He's the head of Vestas North America. He's a great leader of Vestas, a great leader for the board. He's coming back for his second tour of duty as chair of the board. Chris, I'm not sure if you wanted more fun or obviously there's more good work to do, but let me now turn the mic over to Chris. Chris, look forward to hearing your thoughts and guidance as chair of the AWEA board here today.
Okay.
Chris, you're on. Would love to have your thoughts today. And by the way, I'll also say thank you. We had a great board meeting yesterday. I guess that was your first day as chair, but heck of a way to start. Welcome back to chairing the board, and good to have you this morning.
Oh, thanks, Tom, and appreciate your remarks. Yesterday seemed to be long, but again, when you're sheltering in place wherever you are, it's easier and harder at the same time. So, I wish we could be in Denver. We would have loved to welcome you. We have 5,000 strong in Denver, but obviously, as Jana had mentioned earlier, let's get it started. So, I'm good to go.
That sounds great, Chris. Would love to hear your thoughts this morning as incoming chair.
Gotcha. Good afternoon. It's easy to spend your time today thinking about death and infection numbers, but I'm thinking about something else. I'm thinking about you, people. People like Edward Jenner, who's credited with the smallpox vaccine. In his day, 10 to 20% of British people could expect to die of smallpox. Today, that number is 0. I'm thinking about people who bent the arc and made a difference. Jimi Hendrix, Ella Fitzgerald, Julia Child, Jay-Z, Steve Jobs, LeBron James, or is it Last Dance, Michael Jordan? But not just household names. I'm thinking about anybody who turned the page, who cut that knot, who saw an opportunity and changed the world. It could be Alice Waters, who popularized local food and farm-to-table dining. Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph, who founded Netflix, changing how we consume media and certainly inventing binge watching during this COVID. Florence Lawrence, the first movie star, who in her spare time invented the turn signal, brake lights, and windshield wipers. And I'm thinking about all the people who are out there changing the world right now, because we're here to change the world too. We've already come a long way. Tom told you the kind of success renewables has been having, but we're coming up on a bigger challenge than ever. If I could put our current challenge in one word, it would be scaling. Studies are saying we'll struggle to scale past 30 or 40% penetration. But every milestone this industry has hit, we've done it in the face of studies that said it was too hard. We're going to do the same thing this time. We're going to hit 50% by 2030. How? With people. We are an industry of people who change the world. It's who we've always been in the energy business. We're Nikola Tesla, who invented the first alternating current motor. Did you know that he used to do 100 toe curls every night to stimulate his brain? We're Hazel O'Leary, the Secretary of Energy, who turned US policy towards renewables. She was married to a guy who had been Deputy Secretary of Energy. I wonder what they talked about over dinner. We're the scientists of Bell Labs, who created the first modern silicon solar cell in 1954. It had 6% efficiency, by the way. That's where this industry comes from, and that's how I think about you. You're not just people I work with. When I look at you, I see the next Bell Labs, the next Elvis, the next Jackie Robinson, the next Daniel Halliday. Do you know who Daniel Halliday was? He invented a new kind of windmill back in 1854. Back then, it was just a good way of pumping water for steam engines on trains. But the technology led to the powerful turbine we use today. Somewhere in this industry is the next Daniel Halliday. No, perhaps a team of Daniel Hallidays. They're going to take us to 50%. And here's how. First, by leading the overhaul of our broken grid. Yesterday's grid is congested, underutilized, and time-intensive to permit. Curtailment due to congestion is a regular problem in most markets, especially in the Midwest and Texas. Grid Strategies estimates the economic cost of transmission congestion was $8.3 billion in 2018. But despite regular curtailment, many segments of our grid operate under capacity because of solvable technical inefficiencies. Many of the problems with grid come from construction and permitting constraints. Some projects take 10 or more years to get the required permits and start construction. Many others never make it out of the starting gates due to politics and pushback. None of that is good enough. We have the technology to produce 50% of demand with clean energy, and we need an upgraded system to deliver it. Updating our grid means more efficiency, more automation, and better governance. Today's grid is inefficient. It includes upgrades that increase the use capacity of the line and decrease congestion. Technologies already exist that can dramatically increase the operational capacity of our power lines. Advanced conductors, power flow controls, typology optimization, dynamic line reading. Take your pick and run with it. Tomorrow's grid is also automated. It responds to conditions in the near real time to move resources, free up capacity, and avoid curtailment. It uses storage, deploying energy when capacity or ancillary services are needed, and charging when it makes economic sense. And it does it automatically. It also has a smart load using advanced metering technology and demand response to adjust usage in real time, so load and supply work together effortlessly. Tomorrow's grid also depends on smart policy at the federal, state, and utility levels. It means setting up FERC with backstop authority to approve disputed multi-state transmission lines. It means streamlining the siting process for large transmission within states, as New York just did through their Accelerated Renewable Energy Act. And it means incentivizing utilities to invest in efficient transmission now. We have a lot of work to do to get to tomorrow's grid, and it's going to take all the Daniel Hallidays we can get. To get to 50%, we're also going to update our carbon policies. But you ask how? With people like Edith Clark. You know Edith Clark? After being orphaned at the age of 12, she grew up to become the first woman to get a master's in electrical engineering from MIT, the first woman electrical engineer in the United States, the first woman professor of engineering, and the creator of the Clark calculator, a technology we use to make transmission lines more efficient. Somewhere in this industry, there's a team of Edith Clarks who are going to help redesign our carbon policies. Until now, our efforts to reduce greenhouse gases have been largely segmented by state boundaries. We have too many different targets: state renewable portfolio standards, clean peak standards, various rules around green tariffs, a patchwork of state-level credits, and some regionalized efforts to cap carbon emissions. The work that got us here was important and necessary, but updating our carbon policies means federal action and regional consensus. Tomorrow's carbon policy needs to come from the top. We need congressional action to limit carbon. The quickest way to 50% renewable energy by 2030 is for Congress to set a single goal and for states to meet it. The most straightforward mechanisms are national renewable energy goal or a price on carbon. Both will get the job done, and we've already seen both work in states. For example, 8 states have set 100% clean energy goals, while RGGI and California's cap and trade have driven technology solutions and decreased carbon emissions. Although congressional action is the best solution, we can't wait for perfect political climate in Washington to address carbon. What we can do is move right now towards regionalized goals. Our grid doesn't operate within state boundaries. Power is flowing every day between Missouri and Kansas, Nevada and California, Wyoming and Oregon. So why should an approach to reducing emissions stop at the state level? Tomorrow's carbon policy comes from consensus. State and market decision makers need to get together and start talking about regional policy initiatives. We can institute more regional cap and trade programs, allowing a market-based approach to drive down emissions. RTOs and ISOs can integrate carbon pricing into their wholesale markets. We can start setting regional rather than state renewable portfolio standards. I want to see 100% RPS across the Western states, a functional Midwestern cap and trade program, and a wholesale market that integrates carbon pricing. This can happen when we start thinking of the grid as a cross-state mega machine that can only be tamed with cross-state policy goals. Fixing our carbon policies is a big job, but the next Edith Clarks are listening to me right now, and they're going to get it done. Now, how about our broken markets? We're going to solve that problem too. And once again, we're going to solve it with people, like Uno Lamb. Do you know Uno Lamb? He's the father of the high voltage DC lines that we use to carry wind and solar across states. During World War II, when he had a travel ban in Germany, his boss criticized him because he refused to give the Nazi Party salute. Today, the IEEE gives an annual award named after him. There are more Uno Lambs in this industry, and they're going to lead the charge to reform our markets. RTOs and ISIVs govern 60% or more of power delivery in this country. We need to make these organized markets work for renewables. But today, most markets treat renewables as a problem to overcome. Fair market rules should mean all technologies get an equal seat at the table. Although messy and flawed at times, markets generally work for providing the cheapest, cleanest power to customers. Updating our markets means more growth, more compensation for renewables, and more state involvement. Tomorrow's markets cover more of the country, whether by expanding wholesale market boundaries or creating new markets altogether. They increase the pool of available resources to balance the system. Intermittency becomes less of an issue because the sun is shining in one part of the grid when the wind isn't blowing, and vice versa. More regionalization in the West and Southeast will allow for better deployment of renewable energy. Tomorrow's markets compensate generators for all of their contributions. Markets should pay renewable generators for the services they provide to the grid, including ancillary services. Markets also neglect another value that solar, wind, storage, and efficiency provide, mitigating the harmful effects of climate change. I want to see a market structure that pays for what we need more of, clean power, and stops rewarding generators for polluting the environment. Tomorrow's markets recognize state authority in establishing those goals. We can't allow the work of states in integrating renewables into their energy mixes to be tossed aside, period. We need to use our combined industry knowledge and expertise to fight for policies that are fair and encourage markets to honor the resources goals of the state governments. We need to be at the forefront of designing new markets and policies and forging market expansions, and we will be, as long as our Uno Lambs step up and take the lead. Now, the people in this industry are already changing the world in more ways than I can count. You also might not have heard of a guy named Augustin Mouchot. He invented the first engine that converted solar energy to steam power. Then he took his invention on the road and experimented with solar power in the desert in Algeria. That was 1877. Today, 143 years later, new projects are underway to put solar panels in the Sahara and send the energy to Europe. Scattered through our industry today are people just like Augustin Mouchot, developing new ideas, new technologies, and new models that people are going to be using 143 years from now. People at Form Energy have developed a 150-hour battery, orders of magnitude better than what we're using today. Is it practical? The utility Great River Energy is going all in and trying it out. People at the Champlain Hudson Power Express are building a 333-mile long 1,250 megawatt cable, mostly underwater, from Canada to New York. Is it practical? It's already permitted and scheduled to start construction next year. People at Sunrun recently won a capacity obligation for 5,000 separate residential solar and battery systems, creating a single reliable power plant out of a small, geographically diverse system, and showing that virtual power plants are competitive in capacity markets. People at Shell are making hydrogen with wind power, and the Department of Energy says it's possible to move that through existing gas pipelines. What used to be a moonshot is starting to seem like a realistic way to decarbonize the heating and transport sectors now. One more. A few weeks ago, ARPA-E started funding projects to design marketable hydrokinetic turbines for tidal and river currents. Is it going to work? It will work if the right people are on it. I'm calling on the Augustin Mouchots in this industry to step up. All of you Augustine Mouchets listening to me, you Uno Lambs, you Edith Clarks, you Daniel Hallidays, you face real challenges. Not just the long-term crisis of climate change, not just the current crisis of the pandemic, but also growing polarization. You face a culture that says collaboration is weakness and compromise is treachery. Here's the big message for today. The only way to get to 50% renewables by 2030 is to unify. We're here today under a new name, Clean Power, open to everyone in the renewable energy industry. I say industry, but we know how many different industries we really are. We're a wind industry and a solar industry. We're a manufacturing industry and a construction industry. We're a storage industry, a transmission industry. We're an efficiency industry and a demand-side management industry. We're an industry made of many industries, and all too often we're siloed. Let's admit it, unifying isn't always easy. What's good for wind isn't always good for solar. What's good for the construction side isn't always good for the efficiency side. What's good for the storage is not necessarily good for transmission. But we didn't come to this industry to wall ourselves off and fight with each other. We came to this industry to fight against climate change, to fight for clean air and water, to fight for a better world. That world will get here, and we're the people who are going to bring it. That's what I'm asking you to remember as you work together to get to 50%. I'm also asking you to remember who you are and who you're working with. This industry is made of people who bend the arc and change the world. You're one of them, and everybody you work with is one of them too. I know that from day to day, things don't always go the way they want them to, but I'm asking you to remember that you are the next Edith Clark, the next Uno Lamb, the next Daniel Halliday. Your team has good days and bad days, but I'm asking you to remember that you're the next Bell Labs. And when you pick up the phone to talk to someone at another company, when you sit down to email someone in another industry, remember that you're talking to the next Nikola Tesla. Thank you.